I never thought the hardest day of my life would also be the day everything I thought I knew about my mother came undone. It was a gray Tuesday in late October, the kind of day where the sky looks like it's holding its breath. The cemetery was quiet except for the soft patter of rain on black umbrellas. I stood there, in my worn black coat, staring at the polished wooden casket as it was slowly lowered into the ground. Mom was gone. After 3 years of watching cancer steal her piece by piece. She had finally slipped away 2 nights earlier, holding my hand and whispering that she loved me. I was 30 years old, but I felt like a little boy again, completely lost. The service had been small, just a few neighbors, some old colleagues from the library where she worked for 25 years, and me. No big family. It had always been just the two of us. She used to say we were a team against the world. After the last prayer, people began offering their condolences, squeezing my shoulder, murmuring the usual things people say when they don't know what else to say. I nodded through it all, my throat tight, eyes burning. That's when I noticed her. A woman standing slightly apart from everyone else, maybe in her late 50s, wearing a simple navy coat and a black scarf over her silver hair. I didn't recognize her. She wasn't crying, but there was something heavy in her expression, like she was carrying a weight she'd been holding for a very long time. As the crowd started to thin, she walked straight toward me. She didn't introduce herself. She simply reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small brass key attached to a faded red ribbon. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed it into my palm. "Your mother asked me to give this to you today," she said, her voice low and steady. "She hid it for 22 years. She said you'd know what to do when the time came." I stared at the key, confusion cutting through the grief. "Who are you?" She offered a small, sad smile. "Someone who owed your mother more than I can ever repay. She saved my life once." This was her final request. Before I could ask anything else, she turned and walked away, disappearing between the headstones like she had never been there at all. I stood there in the rain, clutching that key, feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted. 22 years. That took me back to when I was 8 years old. That summer, Mom had been different. Tense. She would check the locks 3 times every night. Sometimes I'd catch her staring out the window at nothing, her face pale. One night I woke up to hear her on the phone, whispering urgently, "He can never know." Not yet. When I asked her about it the next morning, she smiled like nothing was wrong and made me pancakes with extra chocolate chips. I forgot about it. Kids do that. Now that key felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. The next few days passed in a fog. I went through the motions of closing her apartment, packing up her books and old teacups, the ones with the little violets she loved. Every drawer I opened felt like opening a wound. Then, on the third night, I sat at her kitchen table with the key in front of me and finally let myself cry. Not just for losing her, but for the feeling that she had taken some enormous secret with her. I started searching. The key had a small engraving on it, Box 147, First National. After some calls, I learned there was an old branch of First National Bank in a small town 2 hours away. Riverside. A place Mom had never mentioned living. I drove there the next morning. The bank was one of those old stone buildings that looked like it belonged in another century. When I showed them the key and my ID, the manager's eyebrows rose slightly, but he led me downstairs without many questions. The safety deposit room was cold and quiet. He slid the box out and left me alone. Inside was not what I expected. No money, no jewelry. Instead, there were 3 things: a thick, worn mother journal, a stack of sealed letters tied with string, and a single photograph. The photograph was of my mother, much younger, maybe in her early 20s, holding a baby. But it wasn't me. The baby had dark curls and was wrapped in a blue blanket. On the back, in Mom's careful handwriting, it said, "Eleanor, 3 months old, 1994. My hands started shaking. I opened the journal first. The first entry was dated 22 years ago, almost to the day. "I don't know if I'll ever let you read this, my sweet boy. But if you're holding this journal now, it means I'm gone. And the truth can finally come out. I have a daughter. Your sister. And I've been hiding her from you. and hiding you from the world that wanted to take you both. I had to stop reading for a moment. The room felt like it was spinning. Mom had never mentioned a sister. Never. Not once in 30 years. The journal told a story I could barely comprehend. When Mom was 21, she fell in love with a man named Daniel. He came from a powerful, wealthy family. What started as romance quickly became control. By the time she realized how dangerous he was, she was pregnant with Eleanor. She tried to leave, but his family had influence, connections that could make people disappear. She ran. She gave birth to Eleanor in secret, but Daniel's family found them. In a desperate move, Mom made a choice that broke her heart. She left Eleanor with a trusted friend, the woman who had handed me the key at the funeral, and went into hiding while pregnant with me. She changed her name, moved across the country, and built a quiet life. She told herself it was to protect both her children. If Daniel's family ever found her, they would take everything. For 22 years, she lived with that guilt every single day. The letters were for me and for Eleanor. Some of them were never sent. Others were drafts where she poured her heart out, explaining why she made the choices she made. In one, she wrote, "I became two different people, so both of my children could have a chance at life. I know you'll hate me for it. I hate myself for it. But I would do it again if it meant keeping you both safe." I sat in that cold bank vault for over an hour, reading every word, tears falling onto the old paper. When I finally stepped outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. I felt completely shattered, and somehow more whole than I'd ever been. The next part of the story was harder. Finding Eleanor took weeks. She was living in Seattle, working as a pediatric nurse. When I called her, my voice cracked the moment I said her name. She went silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "I always knew there was something. Mom used to send me letters when I was little." Then they stopped. We met in person a month later. She looked like Mom. Same gentle eyes, same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. We sat in a quiet cafe and talked for 6 hours straight. She had grown up believing her mother had abandoned her. The woman who raised her, the stranger from the funeral, had done her best. But Eleanor always felt the missing piece. We cried together. We got angry together. We looked at old photos and laughed at how much we both had Mom's nervous laugh. For the first time in my life, I had a sister. And she had a brother. But the story didn't end there. In the final pages of the journal, Mom had written something that changed everything again. Daniel, our father, had died 5 years ago. But before he passed, he had apparently spent years trying to find us. Not out of malice anymore, but out of regret. He had left something behind. A trust fund. For both of us. Mom had known about it. She had refused to touch a single penny. She wrote, "Some things cost more than money. I chose you both over comfort. I hope one day you understand that." We didn't need the money. But knowing she had protected us from that world, even when it meant living simply, sacrificing everything, hit me harder than anything else. 6 months after the funeral, Eleanor and I went back to the cemetery together. We brought flowers, violets, Mom's favorite. We sat on the grass and told her everything we had discovered, how we had found each other, how we were slowly building something new from the pieces she left behind. I still have that brass key on my desk. Sometimes I pick it up and run my thumb over the faded red ribbon. It doesn't just open a safety deposit box anymore. It opened a door to a life I never knew existed. My mother carried secrets heavy enough to break most people. She carried them for 22 years so that her children could have peace. And on the hardest day of my life, a stranger handed me a key that brought my family back together. If you're listening to this and you've lost someone who seemed like they took part of you with them when they left, I want you to know something. Sometimes the things they hide aren't meant to hurt you. Sometimes they're the final, desperate way they try to protect you. And sometimes, when you least expect it, those secrets find their way back to you and give you back something you never even knew you were missing. I miss you, Mom, every single day, but thank you for the key, for the truth, for both of us.